again, we just saw this, and,
It doesn't have to be complicated, it's just gotta say, you have a time frame, get it up, everybody has to clean their walks off, and that's it, period. That's all we're trying to do.
so what are you thinking for the fine? I mean, don't we have to have that in there if
For what?
there is a penalty, a fine of blank is on here?
Most cities do that.
I think if you don't put a fine on here, it'll fall under a different provision of the Delphi Code, which states that anything that doesn't have a specific fine set has a maximum penalty is whatever's set out by state law. I don't know if that's $2,500 or $5,000 or $2,500. So that would automatically take them into city court unless judge prescribed. Yeah, because then you'd have court costs on top of the fine that the judge would prescribe.
I would recommend a minimal penalty.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Like $10 is what some of the cities have done. I think $50 is really high, personally.
I think $10 is, it's a reminder that it has to be done, but it's not so excessive that somebody is, can't afford it, I guess, completely. And, you know, as Dick said, certainly, I think the good neighbor policy is that if you are able and you can help somebody else, that's what we all should be doing. But
Do you recommend a fine of $10 for subsection B? Are there any other amendments that the council would wish to see made to this proposed ordinance? Removal of all from the first sentence, $10 inserted into the blank where a fine of $10, and then subsection C would say that in some legal language that interurban trail is excluded from meeting the provisions of this ordinance.
is this the, do we have the actual ordinance here, or?
No, I didn't
Oh,
draft one.
so then it seems premature to, if we don't have an actual ordinance to pass it, or not?
You'd pass it on first reading with the edits, and then you'd have 2 more chances to read it if anything appears to be different than what you're requesting. Just in the interest of the fact that it's gonna snow probably in the next, what, month or so. Not that we want that.
Okay.
Or you could wait, and we could do, I could draft it, and we can do first, next time, whatever you guys want.
If it's snowing that night, you can always suspend the rules.
All sorts of options.
I move that we pass ordinance 2016-20, the clearing of snow and ice from sidewalks with the fine added and the exclusion of the interurban trail.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass ordinance 2016-20. This would add language, it'd be section 95.62 in the Delphi Code, clearing of snow and ice from sidewalks. All would be removed from the first sentence. $10 would be inserted for the fine amount, and some language would be included in subsection C to exclude the interurban trail from meeting these requirements. Do you have any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed?
Night.
Motion carries on first reading. Ms. Martin will have something for us next meeting. Just a second. All right. All right. Bad check and reconnection charges. Currently in the Delphi Code, it states in section 51.43 that a reconnection charge of $25 will be imposed on each occurrence of a reconnection, and a charge of $25 will be imposed on all returned checks and rejected decline charges for any payment made by debit card, credit card, or any other form of electronic payment. Currently, it could cost the city of Delphi Water Department more than $25 for them to go out and reconnect and put Treasurer Rogers for the return check fee of $25. That's a little low.
Most of them are moving to, there are still some at 25, but most of them are moving to $35.
What you have before you is Board of Public Works and Safety passed a resolution just recommending that the ordinance be amended to require a minimum of $25, but it could be increased by the Board of Public Works and Safety for the reconnection fee and as well for the bad check fee or bad card or whatever other form of payment it is. We found it prudent to be able to do it this way in case things change in the water department or if the bank raises the rate of bad check or anything else.
They charge us.
That the Board of Public Works and Safety can do this by order and as administrative function of the city of Delphi. If the city council set a minimum amount, which is the minimum is the same as what it is now, but allow the Board of Public Works and Safety to increase that amount administratively. If the council does not desire in that fashion, an ordinance could be drafted to amend the language, or to amend the amounts each time they need increased. So we would have an ordinance that just amends language. Instead of saying a reconnection charge of $25, we'd have a reconnection charge of, I think, 50 or whatever it actually costs the water department to go out and reconnect, and then it could be amended that the charge of, instead of 25 going up to 35 for return checks and any rejected or declined charges on debit card, credit card, or any other form of electronic payment.
I believe your maximum is 25 on return checks. I don't think you can go higher. You may be.
Really?
The last form I filled out on a bounce check was 25 or a certain percentage not to exceed, but it had to be whichever was lower. So you'd have to have a high dollar check to get it higher.
So if the banks raise their rates, we just eat it?
Well, no,
Because that's the anticipation that's
Yeah.
gonna happen.
well, no, they may change that too. And it may be the fee's additional, but the actual protest fee is $25.
So what's to prevent, I mean, if we say, oh, let the Board of Works by order, what's to prevent them from saying, oh, we're increasing it to $75? I mean, without the council's input.
An expectation that we'll have common sense and that the public will backlash and express their opinion that
Would be my expectation too, but that's why I asked the question.
It's currently $25, is that
yeah, for both the reconnection fee
correct?
and for a bad check.
For a minimum, it says a minimum.
No,
of 20.
the current ordinance says reconnection charge of $25.
Correct.
And a charge of $25 will be imposed on all return checks and rejected or declined charges.
But I thought you said the order that came from the Board of Works said
No, our,
minimum.
no, our recommendation to the council was to amend the ordinance to state that.
What if, Mary, suggest something?
Yes,
What
ma'am.
if instead of, okay, so a charge of 25, so I get the reconnection, but a charge of $25 will be imposed on all return checks, blah, blah, blah. Or unless otherwise charged by the bank, I mean, so then it's the exact fee that the bank charges? Is that a way we can ensure that it's not more than, $75? So obviously the bank's not gonna charge $75. So that would, if the bank did indeed charge 35, we would have proof of that and that's what would be charged. Do you see what I'm saying?
For Treasurer Rogers?
I do.
Does that make sense?
Sure it does.
Because then you're not charging more.
Yeah,
just
but
trying to
that-
cover it if
But
you
then
didn't.
again, I'm not losing
Right.
either.
Right.
You're just
So it
charging what the
makes
bank
sense.
charges versus 35 and end up maybe it would be 25 like forever, you know?
I'd research over at the prosecutor's office, because I'm not sure that's kosher.
Okay. That's a good point too.
What about for the reconnection charge?
Input on the reconnection charge?
It's been $25 for a long time, and there's people that just pay it each month. And it costs us more than that by the time you get truck out, fuel, overtime, everything. A lot more than $25 each month. For guys who go back out and turn it
When
on.
you say a lot more, what are you proposing?
I'd say at least $50 reconnect charge.
When you say it costs you more, I mean, you are here to,
Not after hours.
Not after hours.
oh, so you do most of them after hours?
A lot of them between like 4:30, 5, the clerk's office closes at 4:30, so it's, and we leave at 4. We could have 4 or 5 turn-ons before 4:30, after 4 o'clock. And you send the guy out and you pay him overtime, however long it takes to turn them on. That's,
I see. You know, I bet they would, think twice if they had to wait till morning, till the next office hours.
And pay $50.
I mean, I think it's good of you guys to be available to.
There's still some of them that wait till the next day or the day after too. Still pay the $25 reconnect fee. I mean, it's,
We need an economics class, don't we?
Well, yeah.
Okay, if you're going to research that other, then,
Yeah, because I agree with Councilman Stewart, I think what he's saying is I need to make sure that's kosher with what the state can actually go after someone for, and if I can use the language of $25 or else otherwise charged by the bank, I need to make sure that that's safe. Because if so, then it would, we don't need a dollar amount otherwise.
That a motion to table? Subject to investigation?
Second.
A motion and a second to table, discussion on bad check and reconnection charges. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item I've got on here, petition for vacation of public way at 1105 South Masonic Street. She brought that paperwork in today. It requires that we give notice to the neighboring property owners, and Mr. Wagner, you're familiar with that parcel. So because it was brought in today, we're unable to give notice in that period of time. What we have essentially, I'll just give you a quick breakdown. There used to be a street that was platted all the way along there. For some reason, the north half of the street was vacated by the city and accepted by the northern property owner. But for some reason, the southern portion of the street was never vacated by the city or was never accepted by the southern property owner. So the southern property owner's got, I think it's 15 feet or 18 of street that is still platted as a street. They went to put up a fence. It was noticed by the neighbor who called into Mr. Wagner's office. He notified me. I talked to the property owner, and then we figured out that it used to be a street. But we still have to give notice to the abutting property owners before the city could.
so who's the owner?
Patty
Can't-
Dunbar.
Oh. Masonic Street.
So that's the intersection of Masonic and Armory. It would be the second house down, I believe. But that should get the notices sent out. We should be able to talk about that in the next month. I don't have any information for you guys on weight and equipment restrictions on public sidewalks, and I don't know if it needs to be a law. What the purpose is, and Superintendent Lyons, knock you out for a second. But to make sure that the pavers don't get messed up with heavy equipment. I don't know if Superintendent Lyons has the specifications on those pavers. in alleyways, they were thicker, they have concrete underneath so that people could drive on them. But for the rest of the way where they're acting as a sidewalk, I don't think they have that base underneath them. Superintendent Lyons, do you know the weight specifications for the pavers, if we have anything from the engineer?
I don't know the specific weight of them. I know there are areas that are bedded, the pavers are set in asphalt or a concrete base underneath, which are load rated for vehicles. Everything else is simply bedded in stone and sand, which is not vehicle rated. So all the areas in front of the businesses are not load rated for vehicles.
Could a snow blower go down though?
Yes, a snow blower is fine. Small garden tractor, something like that. Probably you run into is gonna be vehicles, heavier equipment like skid steers, bobcats, if you will, stuff like that.
And we actually do, there's ordinances on the book for vehicles on sidewalks, but there's no specifications as to what types of vehicles. No person shall drive any vehicle upon a sidewalk or sidewalk area except upon a permanent or duly authorized temporary driveway. But that doesn't state, you know, if it's a garden tractor and they're going down there, a four-wheeler with a plow on the front, or if it's somebody's big truck that they're plowing snow with. There's no, I guess, differentiating between those vehicles driving down a sidewalk. I'm sorry, I'm unprepared on this issue. I wanted to at least talk about it briefly. And hopefully we can talk about it next month's meeting if it's required. I'll try to get more information on the weight of garden tractors and other skid steers and things like that. Although it might be simpler to find them by their terms since we don't have scales.
Or axles.
They probably all have the same amount of axles. So, I apologize I didn't get information too soon. Same with bonding and insurance requirements for work in public ways. Currently, we require a $500 deposit, but I don't believe we have any bonding or insurance requirements if somebody's gonna tear up, say, a sidewalk and replace it. And that's something they're gonna be doing more than $500 worth of work. And so the possibility of having them show proof of insurance, maybe registering once a year with the city, showing that they're bonded, to ensure that if they do skip town or leave it in disarray or hit something or hit a water main or a sewer line, that we are paid for that and we're not on the hook for any money for mistakes that they made. So I'll be bringing that up at next month's meeting. I didn't have the opportunity to fully elaborate on that. Now, we'll go to City Council comments and requests. Councilwoman Pearson. Councilman Shockley. Councilman Seward.
I'd like to get my packet a lot earlier than what I got it the last 2 or 3 months. I don't have time to consume 100 and some pages of stuff like that. I mean, I think that's an undue burden. And I want to address at the next meeting and have my fellow counselors be thinking about the fact of information on hiring an attorney at some point, since we have it in the budget for next year. I think it'd be beneficial on some of these issues to be able to seek counsel and see what our options and opportunities are with that. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Traeger.
Nothing.
All right. Public comment? Yes, ma'am.
Anita Whirling, and I was just wondering if the council might consider, as you're looking at traffic and so forth, the intersection at North Washington and Monroe Street. If you're coming from Monroe Street onto North Washington, you have to pull all the way out into the street in order to see, you know, if there is a vehicle parked at an angle there by the bank. You're out into the street before you can see whether or not, you know, there is traffic coming, and it's extremely dangerous. And I think it's also confusing, it's perhaps even more confusing because of the the yield sign, which you have to have there for the pedestrian walkway. But I've seen some people, you know, if I'm coming on North Washington, and they're kind of creeping out into the street, it's almost as if they assume that that's a stop, you know, that because of the lines are there for the pedestrian walkway, that the traffic coming towards them on North Washington has to stop, and of course it doesn't. So, it, I think, is an accident waiting to happen there, because if there are vehicles parked along the bank at the angle there, the way the street kind of slopes down, you really have to be all the way out into the intersection before you can tell whether or not you're gonna get hit. So, just asking if that could be looked at.
Thank you, Ms. Worthing. Any other public comment, Mr. Royal?
Andy Royal, I just wanted to clarify that earlier, when I was talking about Doug, it wasn't so much Doug that I was concerned about on the issue of, you know, getting stung for something. It's that since I'm in a floodplain area there, that the state, like we had seen with the city, had been fined at some point when they were removing some material, you know, and I don't remember, I heard it from Dan McCain, that the city had been fined when they dug out a portion of that canal pretty heavily. And so the state restrictions are much stricter in some respects, and Doug interprets things very well. And we've talked about it numerous times, and so I didn't want to reflect badly on Doug. I think Doug has a good interpretation. The thing that I'm concerned about is if his interpretation is wrong, then it falls back on my shoulders in the sense that the state can come back and fine me if his interpretation is wrong. So that's why I was careful about putting the deck on, even though I knew, but there's certain regulations that you kind of have to follow. And when I read it through, my interpretation is a little different than his, because they leave it open for penalties to be kind of stiff when it comes to any kind of, you know, you have electricity that has to be a certain height and things like that. So I just wanted to be clear that Doug's been great working with me, and I think we'll continue to work together, but I just wanted to state it that way. But the state could, and, you know, under the guidance before, I'm not sure why we got penalized when they dug out a portion of that canal, but that's just what I was worried about, and I lose sleep over it sometimes, so I didn't mean to sound bad.
Yeah, if it was concerning a portion of that canal or whatever, that could have come through the DNR or whatever, because any excavation in a floodway or floodplain, there's other requirements that falls under, and a lot of that goes under the DNR.
But digging a post hole or something like that, I didn't want to suddenly have somebody on my doorstep and saying, here's $25,000 if you owe us now, you know?
Well,
So, okay.
and typically, if you make corrections, the DNR is more than willing to work with folks.
Okay, good, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Royal.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other public comment? The last thing I want to touch on, Judge Wellnitz, his wife passed away last night, Carol. So if you could keep the Wellnitz family in your thoughts and prayers at this time. It's got to be tough on him. I know Mrs. Wellnitz worked with the city when she was treasurer for DPS. And I know you talked about it at the Board of Works meeting. If you could let the council know what Mrs. Wellnitz helped you with.
She's invaluable. She's a terrific lady. Absolutely wonderful with her books, detailed. If it got to be a joke, because there were several errors made, and it got to be almost a race to see which one of us could find it. It was a competition. In fact, she would appreciate this humor, this $10.01. We laughed about it. And a fabulous lady. Her work was impeccable, but she's a quiet, and what I explained to the Board of Works, there was time, myself and my employees would complain and whine about all the work we were doing on the grants, and Opera House one of them, because with all the vendors it was a lot of detailed work. But we were being paid, And Carol Wellness was volunteer, every bit of it. And she put as much work in as we did. And yet, made it enjoyable to work with her. I said repeatedly, that's been my favorite grant to work on, was the Opera House, because of how well it ran. And one of the reasons it ran well was Carol Wellness. So,
Thank you.
Let me just say that they're doing cremation and so we can.
I wasn't sure.
Oh,
yeah.
We've got services.
Do they have a donation to or anything?
Yes, that's it.
If there's nothing else, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
I never ever do this in the corporation, so we do. Yeah, it's all right. We'll just follow it. We have to advertise it. Have a public hearing.
That's not fun. How are you?
Oh, see, every time I
Make the noise over here.
That's, yeah, she.
I think that looks good.
Sending it, getting it back to me, probably, she told me all the other. Oh, I shared, give me a call, shared.
I've got, hooked that up over here, so
Oh, yeah?
I'm gonna try to upload it to YouTube.